Hi, I'm Dave Urlakis.
And I'm Beth Wolf, and we are the parents of Roxy, who is 5. She'll be 6 in October.
We also have a 2-year-old, and we started working with Roxy with Critical Thinking Child when she was 4. And education is really important to us in our family. We are a couple of huge nerds. So if you've got a STEAM thing, science, technology, education, arts, we're really invested in it, and we want to share that stuff with our children. And the way that started with our kids is we're big readers, and we read to our children all the time. And so we had kids that loved reading, and we're really invested in them with that. And Roxy was really verbal. But when it came time to prepare Roxy for kindergarten, we didn't really know what we were supposed to be doing.
So when we started working with the Critical Thinking Child, it was like a huge door opening for us because suddenly we were receiving concrete information about what we could work on with Roxy and ways to approach it. We were given tools. Lemmy's workbooks are amazing. And even tools that they didn't provide us directly, but that they told us about, like the Dolch Site word list, which I had never heard of until Critical Thinking Child. We had the inclination to work with Roxy, but we didn't have the tools or the skills or the vocabulary until Critical Thinking Child came along and helped us with that.
Right, because we know our kid really well. We are experts in Roxy, but we aren't experts in early childhood education. So even though we were invested and we were reading to our kids, that wasn't enough in terms of teaching Roxy how to look at the world so she could help solve problems on her own, let alone knowing what we should be preparing her for kindergarten or testing her into a kindergarten that we'd like her to go to. So the single biggest reason that kind of kicked all this off for us was the kindergarten problem. Where can we send our kid, and how can we make sure she's getting a good education? But we were also very invested in having a kid who is capable of looking at the world around her and succeeding and flourishing and growing with that, and education is a big component of that. And we knew that we didn't know enough to either solve the kindergarten problem or to set our kid up to succeed just academically out in the world.
Before the Critical Thinking Child came along, we didn't even actually have the vocabulary to say, we need to develop critical thinking skills, which now seems really basic and obvious, but we just literally hadn't thought about it through that lens. And now, sort of on the other side of it, seeing how much our child is able to problem solve and synthesize information. She has learned her letters. She has learned how to read. She has learned math skills. She's learned all these incredible things that seem like more than I would have expected my 5-year-old to know. But she also, more importantly, has learned how to problem solve and put that information together, which is going to help her not just in kindergarten, but through all of school and into adulthood.
Yeah, so Lemmy and her team really gave us the framework for figuring out how to help spend efficient, productive time focusing on education and critical thinking skills with our child at home.
They were also able to tailor it specifically for Roxy. They could say, well, these are the skills that Roxy is great on. She doesn't really need help here, but here are the areas that still need some help, and here are some tools to approach them, which was incredibly helpful because every child is coming at this at a different level or with different skills, different strengths. So getting that really tailored feedback was so helpful.
So while working with Critical Thinking Child, we could take these recommendations and feedback we were getting back from Lemmy and her team and then focus on those things at home in the way that they suggested. So rather than just going numbers, she's got to learn numbers, she helped us out with, well, here's how a number line works. And this is how you need to get the kids thinking about not just what the shapes of the numbers are, but what the value of those numbers are, and how using things like number lines and looking at groups of things quickly and kind of assessing that, how those skills build together. So you're not just cramming a bunch of facts into your kid's head, you're teaching your child how to look at the world around them and put those things together to have a meaningful understanding of numbers or math or letters or words. And it made a big difference even with reading. So we mentioned the Dolch sight word list, which is very helpful. But also, Lemmy had us focusing on not just what the letters are, but what the sounds, so that we are also teaching Roxy not just to learn these sight words, but also learn how to sound out words her own so she could read new words and knew how to approach new words in a new way. So where would Roxy be now without Critical Thinking Child? I don't know for certain, but I can tell you it's probably not a kid who can just pick up chapter books and read them on her own.
Probably not.
And she's probably not a kid who would be going to the kindergarten she's going to now based off of how successfully she tested, based off of everything she learned at the Critical Thinking Child.
Yeah, we went into the testing not knowing how it would go and trying not to expect anything. And in fact, we talked a lot going into it about how, regardless of how the testing went, we were really happy that we had gone through the process with Critical Thinking Child because those skills would be helpful no matter where Roxy landed. But as it turned out, she had all of these skills that she was armed with from the help we got from Lemmy and all the work that Roxy did here at home. And she tested really well for selective enrollment and got placed in a regional gifted center. So she starts in a couple weeks, and we're excited, and she's really excited too.
Yeah, and so now we can approach education with our kid as not just, here are all these facts you need to learn. We can approach it as, hey, here's a new area. How can we think critically about this? And how can you learn more about this aspect of math or this aspect of reading or science activities? I mean, we have a kid who loves doing science experiments at home. And we can be more productive, and rather than just going, well, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and hope it works, now we have a foundation to build off of, which is really exciting. And what's also great is the way it's impacted our whole family. Our 2-year-old has seen Roxy working on all this and the great strides she's made. And so now he wants to learn his letters, and he's invested in reading and wants to know about numbers. And so now we have a 2-year-old who knows all of his letters already because he's seen his big sister learn all this stuff and he's been invested in it himself.
Yeah, Critical Thinking Child has been great for our child, but it's also been great for our whole family.
Yeah, and so we are very thankful to Lemmy and everybody on her team, and Critical Thinking Child has done so much for us, and we're just so thankful. So thanks.
Yeah, we love Lemmy.